Obituary.
Andrew van der Bijl. Brother Andrew. God's Smuggler. Brother Andrew, a Dutch missionary who smuggled Bibles behind the Iron Curtain, died on September 27th, aged 94.
It would start with a contact from a trusted source, a discreet introduction, then a seemingly random encounter, perhaps in the street. Only once safely indoors and out of sight would Brother Andrew hand over the box he'd brought with him. His contacts choked back tears when they saw what was inside. "You know, years ago I knew that people in the West were praying for us," a Romanian Christian once told him. "But now, for many years, we have not heard from them. We've never been able to write letters, and it's 13 years since we received one. It has come to us that we are forgotten, that nobody is thinking of us, nobody knows our need, nobody prays." As soon as he got home, he promised he would tell so many people about the little Christian community in Romania, or Bulgaria, or Poland, or Russia, wherever he happened to be, that never again would they feel alone. Early on, he learned about putting a hand up to volunteer for a job, or stretching one out to a fellow human being. His father was up at 5 watering the garden to help feed his 6 children. Then he cycled 4 miles to his smithing job. His invalid mother sat in her chair at home listening to the gospel station from Amsterdam. Sometimes it was hymns, sometimes preaching. The family was poor, even by the standards of the poor in pre-war Holland. Their house was the smallest in the village. But he never forgot the unending stream of beggars, itinerant preachers and gypsies who came to their door. In his autobiography, he recalled how the cheese would be sliced thinner, the soup stretched with water. Sometimes they had to dig up tulip bulbs from the garden and eat them like potatoes, but no guest was turned away. He'd never intended to be a smuggler, for God or for anyone else, but rebellion was another seed that was sown young. He was just 12 when war came to Holland in 1940. A German lieutenant took over the Burgermeister's house and began giving orders to the villagers. In the middle of the night, the boy would creep down from the loft, steal his mother's precious rationed sugar, and pour it into the German soldier's petrol tank. She never said a word. The first communist country he visited was Poland. They called it socialism there, not communism. On hearing there was to be a big festival in Warsaw, he wrote to the organisers, suggesting they might teach him about socialism if he could tell them about God. "You can do what you want to," they said. So, in July 1955, he set off across Europe by train. In his bag were hundreds of tracts entitled The Way of Salvation, which he intended to give away. Religion, he learned, wasn't banned under communism. It had been co-opted by the state. In Czechoslovakia, ministers had to renew their licenses every 2 months and submit their sermons in advance for official approval. Where they could not beat God, the authorities tried to outshine his appeal. In East Germany, they offered free welcoming services instead of baptism, or wedding services that were legal and free of charge. Those who saw God as the higher authority were told they were misguided. Many lost their jobs and were imprisoned. Children wore a red scarf as a sign that they were sceptical of their parents' so-called religious superstitions. Seeing the mass of red scarves at the end of the festival in Warsaw, he thought of a verse from the book of Revelation. "Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain," it said. Persecuted Christians in communist countries would otherwise die. He took it as a sign from God. And so began his new life. The day his visa to Yugoslavia came through, a neighbour gave him his Volkswagen Beetle. "My wife and I have talked it over," the neighbour said, "and there's no untalking us." Friends he stayed with in Berlin were enthralled at the idea of taking Bibles to the Soviet Union, he recalled. Their church had some Russian Bibles. Couldn't he take them along? He wasn't so sure. Their car was already weighed down. Then some other friends came with a whole carton of Ukrainian Bibles. Of course we'll take them, his fellow smuggler said, stowing them openly on his lap. If we're going to be arrested for carrying in Bibles, we might as well be arrested for carrying in a lot of them. He learned to get around those who tried to lay down the law. Filling in visa forms, he put his occupation down as teacher rather than missionary. He stressed that he was not preaching but bringing greetings from Holland, and at every border he whispered the smuggler's prayer. When you were on earth you made blind men see. Now, I pray, make seeing eyes blind. He never ceased to be amazed by those he met. The people in Macedonia, who were too scared to come to church unless it was dark, but come they did. The people in Bulgaria, who would arrive at intervals so that at no time did it appear as if a group was gathering. It took an hour for 12 of them to assemble. A man named Petrov, who spent all his pension buying up cheap Bibles whenever he found them. Pages were often missing. They'd been cut out for cigarette paper. But Petrov made them whole, matching a book of Genesis to a Bible that did not have one. All to give the finished work to a church that had no Bible. The courage and common humanity of those he met would have touched anyone, not just the faithful. He knew he could stop at any moment and return to a quiet life in Holland, but he kept on carrying Bibles across borders. To Cuba, where Dutch visitors did not need a visa, to Uganda, and then across the Middle East. Soon the task was too big for one man, and he founded Open Doors, a charity to train a new generation of smugglers. In 1981, he organized Project Pearl, unloading 1 million smuggled Bibles onto a beach just south of Shantou City to be sent across China. A missionary church was a living church, he believed. A sticker on his battered suitcase read, "Our God is not dead. Sorry about yours." He wished there were 10 of him. He longed to split himself into a dozen parts and answer every call that came. Someday he'd find a way to do it. And he did.